Hello and welcome. This is Eagle Eye 621, and what you see behind me are three different types of sweetberry farms. You have a micro farm, you have an AFK'able farm, and a fully automatic farm. But before we get into the farms, let's talk a little bit about the sweetberry, the plant, and why you would want it. As always, there are some timestamps in the description if you want to jump ahead. The first thing to know about these sweet berries is that you can find them in the taiga biomes and a bunch of the different variants of that. You can plant these on grass blocks, dirt, podzol, coarse dirt, or farmland, and they have a couple of interesting effects. So I have a little testing area back here where we can plant them. They will slow you down as you walk through them to about a third of your normal speed. They have a couple of different growth stages. You see this is the planting stage. This is one growth, number 2, and number 3. Now, after this stage, they will do a half a heart's worth of damage to the player or any mob except for the fox that moves through them. If you stand still, it doesn't hurt, but it will hurt as you move through it if you're not in creative mode. This actually makes for one of the only real good, unique uses of this is as a pathfinder blocker. So if we put a villager down here, we put a husk over here, even though it won't actually be hurt by this stage of growth, it still will not cross this path, and neither will the villager. So this is actually an interesting feature you can use to try and protect your base or to try and encourage mobs to move in a certain direction. As I said, the only mob that is not affected by this would be the fox. Now, in terms of what you would want to do with the sweet berries, there isn't a whole lot. You can eat them, but they're a rather terrible food source. They would do 2 hungers or 1 of your drumsticks. As you just saw, sometimes the villagers have some pathfinding errors as they're running away from mobs and just ran into this even though it did take some damage. You can use them to breed foxes, and 2 wild foxes that you breed will trust you, which is really their biggest use. You can put them in the composter, but they're not really that good to make bone meal. And you can trade them for emeralds, but it's not a great trade, and there's a lot better ways to get emeralds than that. But they do make for a nice decoration, and sometimes when you're playing Minecraft, you just want to collect everything. So let's talk about our first farm, which is a micro farm, and these work by using bone meal on them. So at first we have a little bit of a test here to show how many of these dispensers you will actually need. And we can do that because when dispensers are fast growing plants, they won't waste bone meal when they are growing a plant. So I have a nice little setup here that has 2 observer clocks that will be triggered by this lever. And these clocks will trigger all 3 of these dispensers. So if we turn that on, you can see that these are all full, and even though you can hear that clicking, it's not actually doing anything. But as we start to right click, you can see that it is very quickly repopulating the plant, and if we hold down the right click as you saw, then we'll just keep on taking these berries. So now that I've done that for a little while, I can turn off this clock, and we can see that this dispenser has used bone meal. This dispenser has also used bone meal, and this one is still completely full. So we know that you only need 2 dispensers to maximize your micro farm here. Let's throw these back. So this is our little setup that we have here, and these are the materials that you need to build it. You do need a sweet berry to plant. You need a block of grass in order to plant it on. You're going to need a lot of bone meal. a sticky piston, 2 dispensers, 2 observers, a solid block. Doesn't have to be smooth stone, but it does have to be a full solid block, and a lever. And the way we set this up very basically is we have whatever we're going to plant our bush on, which we do. We have both dispensers facing into that sweet berry bush. The solid block is connected to both of those dispensers. And we have an observer facing this way, an observer that would be facing into it, and then this is a sticky piston that will be activated when we flick the lever on this solid block, and you hear the ticking. Now, you will get about 2.5 berries per bone meal, so we can do that real quick by switching over into game mode survival. And there are no berries in my inventory. We have 1 stack of 64 for each. We'll turn this on and we will just start to harvest. And you can see how fast this is working. You can also see that I took a little bit of damage by walking into the berry bush, which is the hazard, and I almost ate one. And that's the end of the bone meal. And you can see I have just over 2.5 stacks. So as I said, that is about the rates you will get from this. And you can see when I eat one, it did 1 full bar. And this will take the rest. So it is not a great food source. And we can throw these back there as well and switch back into creative mode to go on to our next type of farm, and that is an AFK'able farm. That is essentially a farm that you can just hold right down, or right click down, and work. Now I will make a brief note that if you saw some additional materials over here, you can have a hopper minecart underneath it to collect it, and you can also hook up a hopper and some chests to the dispensers in order to provide more bone meal so that you can leave this running. But if you don't want to waste bone meal on it, you can make a setup like I have here. And the way this works is the player will sit in the minecart, they will trigger it to go off, and they will go all the way down these powered rails. They will get to the end here, and you do go out an extra block because sometimes as you're making the corner, if your rail was right here, you'd clip and take a little bit of damage. And then you go all the way back. And of course, forth. And once more all the way back until you reset and you start the loop over again. Underneath, you will see that we do have powered rails, and these are connected to some minecart hoppers to collect the drops that your player doesn't pick up. And this is connected to an automatic unloading system and launching system, which will trigger as soon as these blocks are placed back in there, which I do by creating a 1-tick pulse by flicking this lever once, which will make a 1-tick pulse across this, which will cause these sticky pistons to drop their block. I'll put an iCard in the screen right now for the sugarcane farm that I did, which goes into a lot more detail on these collection systems. Now, what the player is going to do is going to hold in one direction. So let's jump in here and let's switch back to survival mode. I'm going to keep my cursor faced like this and hold down the right key as I flick this lever, and you'll see how this farm works as you go by. Now, you'll notice that I don't collect every bush. That's okay. We'll come back around. And sometimes you do take a little damage, even with that extra thing based on your game. Now, because you are collecting sweet berries into your inventory, you actually do have a little bit of protection against that damage. And that is when you lose some hearts or you lose your hunger, you can actually just eat some of these sweet berries. Now, as you go around, you will see that we go back to the beginning, and we go and try and hit the ones that we missed. And of course, while we're traveling around, we will continue to have these plants regrow. Now you can, of course, expand this to make it bigger. You just need to be cognizant that the sweet berries can't be more than roughly 128 blocks away from the player, which is the random tick distance in order for these berries to continue to grow. And if I had activated the minecarts, then you would see them going back and forth underneath, collecting all of these drops. So I will bail out here and switch back into creative mode, just so you can see that this would be happening while you were riding there and harvesting all of these berries. Roughly, these are the materials that you need. Now, obviously, there are no numbers here because it all depends on exactly how big you want to make your farm. You need blocks to put the rails on for the minecart that you're going to ride in. You need some grass for the berries that you're going to plant. This glass wall is in the back over here to make sure it doesn't tip off that back edge. And then you are going to need a collection system for the drops that you are producing. And you'll see when they come back, if they have any items, they'll automatically trigger the system to unload themselves. And now let's talk about the fully automatic version. And for that, you are going to need to track down some foxes in your world. Foxes will harvest sweetberry bushes, and they will try and succeed in eating some of the sweet berries, but a lot of them you will see them drop on the floor. You do need to note that they do have a detection range, and that range is 16 blocks, which is the size of this. It fits all in one chunk, and this is the maximum size you can have it without the fear of your foxes ending up in a corner and not collecting the rest. So you do need to have some sort of a minecart system underneath. This is just a very tiny version of that. So you can see that a hopper minecart will go around underneath and have some sort of a system that will deposit it into a chest. And again, this is without any specific numbers, what you would need for your collection system underneath. Now, this is not a very efficient way to do this, because the foxes will bunch up, and sometimes the foxes will actually trigger towards the same bush, and when they get to it, it's obviously harvested already. It takes a little bit of time for them to find a new bush to target, so you have a much more efficient setup if you put them in individual cells, and the cells are exactly what you see there. You need your sweet berries in order to plant, you need your glass blocks to contain the fox, and then also the grass in order to plant them on and have the fox in there. So just to give you some reference, this is not universal because different foxes or different times of the day do appear to have different efficiencies. This is a 3x3, and most of the time you will see all of the bushes picked, which means that this is not the most efficient per fox setup you're going to find. Did a 4x4 over here, and most of the time you will find, again, most of the berries picked. Sometimes there is a few left, but sometimes they will manage to actually harvest them all. And then we get here to our 5x5, and you do see that we still have some sweetberry bushes that have not been plucked. And again, despite these all being the same size and obviously the same creature, some of them are more efficient than others. I would focus on the 5x5 size because I haven't seen them effectively collect all of the berries, and the foxes are going to be a lot more difficult to get than the sweet berries themselves. And also in terms of the lag generation, the entity in your world is going to cause a lot more lag than the crop in your world, as well as the minecart running underneath, which is going to be most likely the largest source of lag in this whole setup. So you do want to make sure that the foxes are always busy in order to get the best results in your world. Now, these foxes may try and escape. That's why you need a 2-block wall here. Do also be careful when you are transporting these back to your world. Foxes will attack other mobs, like your chickens that they will try and kill, and wolves will try to attack your foxes as you're bringing them back. So just be careful about that as well. So once you set up these pens, or you can set up the minecart collection system first, and then you'll have a fully automatic source of sweet berries if you're comfortable enslaving these very cute tiny creatures. If you found this video helpful, I would appreciate a like, and for more videos like this, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for stopping by.